All right, so it's officially noon. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll just give folks another couple of minutes to start trickling in. My name's Sue. I'm the moderator today. Jean-Pierre Higgins is our technical assistant. So if you have any issues with the Zoom program, feel free to send her a message. We have the chat. You can drop notes in the chat, but we're going to use the Q&A function today. It's a much more robust way to get your questions answered. All the panelists can type an answer or respond to it out loud. So please try to put your questions in the Q&A. If you can find that little button on your taskbar, that is the best way to go, we have found. And give you a few minutes to get your lunch together. This lunchtime meeting. Stephen, I think you're muted if you are speaking to us.
Jen Smith just gave us a little message here. The chat is currently disabled. Just want to let you know.
Oh, thanks. All right. Well, if you, so then in that case, you should be able to click on Jean-Pierre's name and send her a direct chat, even though the chat is not there. So that's probably the best answer, but I'll respond to this Q&A question so you guys can see what that looks like. No. It's been a while since I've used this webinar function myself, so it's good to there we go.
45 participants. Great.
Yep. So we do have an action-packed program, and we want to make sure we get to your questions. That is, hopefully the bulk of our time here today. So I think we will let people continue to trickle in, and I'll just start introducing some of our speakers here. So welcome. My name is Sue Schäufele. I work for UMass Extension. Our role here is to just help farmers with whatever crop, pest, farm issues they may encounter across the state of Massachusetts. And this is a topic that we hear from folks a lot about, just how do I get connected with FSA and NRCS? I hear about these funding and technical assistance programs, and I want to know what is out there and how to get connected. So we have Jack Loomis and Bailey Albert, who are coming live from the Amherst office here. And then we also have Stephen Toronto and Shannon Hickey from two of the buy local groups, CISA and CMAP, that offer some technical assistance in the area of connecting to these types of financial programs. So we're going to have a presentation from Jack and Bailey that'll take about 35 minutes, and brief introductions from Stephen and Shannon, and then we'll just launch into your questions. Again, please use the Q&A button to ask your questions, and you can pop them in there at any time, and we'll make sure to get to as many of them as we can today. We have budgeted till 1:30. We're recording this meeting, and we'll make that recording available, and we're gonna type up all the questions and answers and put that out as like an FAQ kind of document at the end too. So if there are tons of questions and we can't get to them all today, we'll get the answers and get them out to you in a written form. So I'm going to stop talking now and turn it over to Bailey and Jack.
Thank you, Sue. I am going to do the obligatory, let me share my screen and make sure it works, piece here. So
on these webinars, you guys can't see each other, so I always like to just give a little snapshot of who's in the room. There's about 50 people here, farmers from all different times in their career, people who have applied before or not, gotten funding or not. And so no question should be too far out there. So
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you all for taking your time to join us. Jack and I are just going to turn off our videos for the presentation, but we're still here and we'll happy to join you back when it's question and answer time. All right, so here we go. Take it away, Jack.
Thanks, Bailey, and thank you for hosting us today, and thank you all that were able to make it. We're excited that you could share this lunch hour with us. Yeah, like Sue said, anything we can't get to today, you're gonna have our contact info, and we'll type up answers to, and hopefully this can be the start of our conversations to help you out, get involved with us here at FSA and NRCS respectively. Next slide, please.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. Like to echo what Jack said, thank you, Sue, for hosting us and everybody for joining. My name is Bailey Albert. I am the Massachusetts Outreach Coordinator for the Farm Service Agency. And within that role, I also do work as the beginning farmer champion in Farm Service Agency's purview. This is our contact information. All of the information will be shared with you after the webinar, so don't worry about scrambling to get it down.
And this is me, same counterpart. So questions about just how to engage with us in general. We're sort of those outward facing folks, sort of a newer role for both agencies, but I'm the outreach coordinator for NRCS Mass. Also the beginning farmer coordinator to help, especially those folks who have not worked with us before, get into our programs.
Great, and as Sue mentioned in the introduction, Jack and I work out of the state office in Amherst, but we do service the entire statewide, and anyone is welcome and encouraged to reach out to us no matter where you are. Which leads me into this slide here. The way that we work as FSA and NRCS together is that we service you through our county offices or our service centers. The county office and service center term are interchangeable. Your office is determined by your location, what county you reside in or farm in, etc. So we have an interactive link here, again, will be shared, that you can click on the county that you live and work in, and you'll be directed to the address and contact information for the Farm Service Agency and Natural Resource Conservation Service for your area. Working in the county office with that staff, those are our boots on the ground field staff who are going to help you navigate everything from filling out your paperwork to making plans with you and just supporting you in all things. Your farm records are kept with us in the county office system. So that's your home base. As always, like I said, you can contact Jack and I. We can put you in touch with your county office if this link isn't working or anything like that. But your county office staff will become your points of contact in this journey.
Great, thank you. So it's a little small. It's really mostly just meant to be a sort of indicator of the process once you've located who you're going to be working with. Sue is actually going to send this out with the supplementary materials after. It's basically just trying to take all of those lengthier processes and kind of humanize it and make it simpler. It's a one-page document here that shows everything from I've never heard of the USDA to I just finished my contract. So basically these little circles, the contact buttons, actually hyperlink out to connect you to the relevant paperwork that you need to do for eligibility. So those are always updated, which is kind of nice. So you'll have that sent out to you. But I just wanted to show this here as well, because you know, at the beginning, it can be sort of unclear who to start with and what to do. So hopefully that's helpful a little bit. And also just to note that you don't need to go through any of these steps by yourself and totally by yourself. We always want to advocate for reaching out to that field staff you've been assigned to, or to us if you're not sure of where you stand in a process. It can really vary depending on when you get involved with the agency, what you're trying to do, and the time of year that you make contact with folks. So this is just something that should be true regardless of when you enter into our workload pipeline. Next, please.
Yes. Yes, and thank you, Jack. This is a fantastic tool that Jack and counterparts at the American Farmland Trust worked on together. And that leads us into our meat of our presentation, why we're here today, this generalized overview of what Farm Service Agency and Natural Resources Conservation Service is and does for you. We do recognize that this will be a basic generalized overview, and any parts that you want to explore deeper, more information, we will give you follow-up resources, and we are offering ourselves as guides for the process. So please do reach out. So to begin, the United States Department of Agriculture consists of 29 different agencies, and we're grouped into things called mission areas. Farm Service Agency and Natural Resources Conservation Service are in the Farm Production and Conservation Mission area. All that this means to you is that we work really closely amongst our agencies, and a lot of our records apply to both agencies and things like that. So the reason that we're presenting together today is that our work goes hand in hand, and we want to give you a little bit of a peek into how that works and tell you about how that can serve you going forward. So right to it. What is FSA? And I will give the little caveat here that being a federal government agency, we do love our acronyms. So it's a bunch of alphabet soup, and if it feels like we're talking in acronyms too much or anything like that, we do apologize in advance, and all the follow-up information will be able to simplify it down into what do those crazy letters mean. But to begin, Farm Service Agency is here to do just that. We're here to serve farms and farmers. You are all the ones out there doing the hard work every single day, and we are here to support that in any way we can. We want to help you start and grow your operation, build resilience to anything that might come your way, and recover after disaster events. So Farm Service Agency is responsible for carrying out the programs and policies that Congress makes in their laws. Every 4 or 5 years, a new farm bill comes out that directs funding and programming to our agricultural producers, and Farm Service Agency helps get those to the right places. We are also the go-to agency for many USDA records. So we kind of manage the eligibility determination process for farmers looking to work with FSA and NRCS. And what that just means is if you're getting financial assistance from the government, there is a little bit of oversight. We want to make sure you just check all the boxes. So Farm Service Agency is consisted of two halves of a whole. We work very closely with one another, but we have two distinct teams. We have our farm program team and our farm loan team, which I'll dive into in just a second. We do different sort of works, but with the same purpose and a lot of the same staff. So basics on getting started with the USDA. Well, with Farm Service Agency. Farm Service Agency is often the first stop in your journey of working with USDA, whether it be with us specifically or with NRCS. That's not to say that it has to be. You can have a conversation with Jack over at NRCS first and then come our way, but we are really the starting point for the reasons that we discussed, being kind of the record keepers and things. So one of the first things that you will do with Farm Service Agency is getting established with a farm number. A farm number is required for working with most USDA programs. Jack will touch on this. NRCS can give you technical service advice without having a farm number, but anything that goes beyond that, like financial assistance or cost sharing programs, does require you to have a farm number. Getting a farm number is free of charge. It's as easy as coming to the office telling the staff where you farm, you know, the address, the acreage, and we draw a little picture of it in our map and assign a farm number to that plot of land. You will be asked to show proof of control of the land. You are not required to own land to get a farm number. If you're leasing the land, we just need to know by some way that you have control and you share in the risk of producing on that land. There is no size requirement for a farm number. We can make you a farm down to the 1/100th of an acre. This is something that USDA is doing to be more inclusive and recognizing the fact that so much agriculture is taking place on smaller scales in urban areas and things like that, and size is not a determinant of the aid we can provide. After you get a farm number, we wouldn't be the federal government if we didn't ask you to fill out some paperwork with us. So a lot of this eligibility paperwork, we call it, is about what is your operation, who are you, where are you farming? One of my favorite examples is one form asks about your income. It asks if you make more or less than $900,000 a year. And for most of us, that is a pretty straightforward answer. So I highlight that one just to say, these are the questions that we're asking just to make sure that you fit into the rules and regulations of what Congress had in mind with these programs. And then lastly, a farm record keeping process that is also under FSA's purview is acreage reporting. Acreage reports are where you really tell us what you planted, how much of it, and when you planted it, or reporting what you use your land for. These are required annually for certain USDA programs, so it's just something to keep on your radar. Your county office will remind you of deadlines and things like that. All right, this is my personal important note just to say up front to anyone thinking about starting the process. It's really important that you participate consistently between farm programs and farm loans, our teams, and then between FSA and NRCS. What that means is that when you sign up, whether you sign up as your name and using your social security number, or if your farm is an LLC or it's incorporated with a different tax ID number, it's recommended that you keep that consistent. If you get a farm loan from FSA and then you want to go talk to Jack about getting a high tunnel, please apply the same way. This one keeps your records straight, it helps you and helps us. And in the event that a spot check or an audit comes along, it doesn't look like you're trying to change your name or anything like that. So we recommend the easiest way to do it is you register with us the same way that you file taxes for your agricultural operation. So however if you file a Schedule F, how you do that is an easy way to register with us. Okay, now to a little bit more detail on what we can offer you from Farm Service Agency. Our farm loan team is what is called a lender of first opportunity. This means that we are here to serve producers, give them access to credit who are unable to receive loans through conventional commercial sources. So for example, if you are unable to secure a loan through a commercial bank due to any kind of financial constraints, a lower credit history or something of the sort, FSA does not discriminate on that basis. We are here to provide credit to those who can't obtain it through conventional financing sources. And with that, our loans are low interest rate loans, also very important for life in general. As we see every other day, it feels like the interest rates are going up, and they do change monthly within Farm Service Agency, but as it stands for the month of March, our loan rates are under 5%, which is very competitive in the field right now. So our loans are designed to help you begin your process, improve your operation, your situation, expand, transition into new markets, and just strengthen your operation, however that means. So we have kind of two routes that our loans are lumped into. We've got farm ownership loans. which can be used to purchase or expand on real estate situations. So help you purchase some farmland, help you purchase a house if it is, attached to the farmland. We can help with that. Build a new barn, fix a barn that caved in, et cetera, et cetera. And then our farm operating loans are just that. Basically can finance anything that you need for your operation, whether it's feed for your livestock or seed to plant for next year, or fuel or tractors or any sort of equipment. This is all very broad, but the idea here is that we are here to help you in any way we can. Our farm service agency, farm loan officers are such a valuable resource. And if you just call up, make an appointment and talk about where you're at, what you're looking for, they can help you navigate this process. And as we will follow up with links, there is a new tool that Farm Service Agency made called the Loan Assistance Tool. That it's an interactive, just a few question process that helps you kind of see where you stand eligibility wise for getting a Farm Service Agency loan. And my last plug for farm loans is that USDA through FSA has been very responsive to customer feedback. And one of the things is that the application process is been overwhelming. So Farm Service Agency just at the beginning of the month reduced our loan application from 29 pages down to 13. Of course, there's records and paperwork when you're getting anything with financing, but we've really simplified that process as much as possible and want to help all of our producers succeed if they get a loan through us. And then to our farm program team. So our farm programs are split into a few different categories. A lot of what we do falls under disaster assistance, meaning programs that are designed to help you recover from damages that are brought about by natural disasters. Natural disasters meaning weather-related incidents, storms, droughts, wildfires, that kind of thing. I want to take 1 second here and talk to you a little bit more in depth about our non-insured crop disaster assistance program, also called NAP. That is one acronym that works really well, simplifies that one down. NAP is one of the permanent programs that we offer every year. It's basically insurance for crops that aren't eligible for commercial crop insurance like corn and soybeans are, out in the Midwest. It requires that you get coverage annually with a basic fee and that you follow a specific procedure for filing a claim, just like any insurance program. But I do want to mention that NAP coverage, this insurance coverage, is free for you if you are a historically underserved producer due to your race, ethnicity, or gender, or if you're a beginning farmer farming for less than 10 years. We'll get into that a little bit at the end. But the reason that I mention that is we really recommend that if this applies to you, you take advantage of it. Free coverage is too good to pass up. And just to be transparent, NAP is a catastrophic level insurance program, so it means that you will have to absorb some of the loss before it kicks in. So it will never be a full profit replacer, but if you are completely wiped out in a hurricane or a drought year, this will give you enough to hang on and buy seed to start again next year, or enough aid to feed your livestock, things like that. So NAP is just one of those programs that we really like to promote as this disaster assistance risk management tool. Income, safety net, and commodity price support, a lot of buzzwords there. What that means is we have programs that protect from market price fluctuations. We know when things go on all over the world, it can change the prices in the blink of an eye. So one example, just to highlight what I mean here, is our dairy margin coverage program. This is for dairy producers, and they get a payment triggered if the national price of milk drops below a certain threshold compared to the national average of feeding the cows. So just to recognize that the dairy farmers themselves have no control over the going rate of milk, so we support them and make sure that they're able to stay in business when the prices are going up and down and all around. Conservation programs are mainly the purview of NRCS, and Jack will speak to those. But we do have one program that Farm Service Agency administers in partnership with NRCS, and this is called the Conservation Reserve Program. The idea here is that farmers that have environmentally sensitive land, land that might be subject to erosion or near a wetland or have any sort of conservation concerns, these farmers are paid to not farm the land, but instead leave it devoted to conservation practices. So Farm Service Agency will pay you a long-term rental rate for about 10 to 15 years and to implement conservation practices on this land. So it's a way for the land to be regenerated and taken care of, with the idea that farmers are still compensated for their land that they've taken out of production. Lastly is our ad hoc programming. This means these are just kind of as needed programs that roll out due to unforeseen disasters, like maybe a global pandemic or severe natural disasters that are very unanticipated and have wide-ranging effects. So I just want to quickly mention two that we have going on right now. They are the Emergency Relief Program Phase 2, ERP2, and the Pandemic Assistance Revenue Program, PARP. Both of these programs are revenue-based programs based on your tax information, and this is new for FSA. We've not done revenue-based programming in the past, but the idea is here that these programs can help fill gaps in previous assistance programs and provide support to producers that have suffered from recent years' natural disasters and from the COVID-19 pandemic. So kind of a way to make you whole. Some programs have been in place but didn't really capture the full need. So this is that idea. For the Emergency Relief Program Phase 2, it's you might be eligible to apply if you experienced revenue losses from certain natural disaster events, weather related, in 2020 or 2021, compared to revenue that you had in a benchmark year of 18 or 19. And the same idea for the Pandemic Relief Program. If you were farming for at least part of 2020 and your revenue there was much less than the benchmark year of 18 or 19 because you suffered from the pandemic, this program can offer a way to make you a little bit more whole in that sense. So those are our programs, and I just want to one more time reiterate that staying up to date with your acreage reports and your eligibility paperwork, make sure that you are ready to take advantage of these programs whenever they come along. And also being registered and involved with our county office system means that you will have the inside scoop when ad hoc programs come down the road or things like that. You'll just be there and be assisted in taking advantage of these programs that the government is providing to help you. So thank you for listening there, and I'm going to turn it over to Jack to tell you a little bit more about NRCS.
Thank you, Bailey. Much appreciated. Always lovely to hear about FSA programs that are so useful to us. And now I'll try to get into some of the same for NRCS. Again, basic overview. Today's concept is framing who we are and what we do. So generally, we are a non-regulatory federal agency within USDA's Farm Production and Conservation mission area. And broadly speaking, our mission is to help people help the land. Workforce consists of skilled natural resource professionals. Next slide, please.
It's trying.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Apologies here, everyone. There we go.
All right.
Sorry, Jack.
Back by popular demand is this rather reductive slide, but I've gotten comically large amounts of positive feedback about it. I know the lines are too thin, I'm sorry. But essentially, NRCS offers technical assistance and financial assistance. Let's talk about both. Next slide, please. So technical assistance is also sometimes referred to as conservation technical assistance, or CTA. is essentially free personalized advice and information from us and our professionals that work within the agency here in the state and also nationally in some cases to help producers make decisions on their operations related to natural resource conservation. It's free and it is voluntary. So just because we say this might be a good idea doesn't mean you have to do anything about it. One of the things I love about CTA is that, you know, we talk about financial assistance programs. Technical assistance doesn't necessarily require that you're enrolled or apply for anything like that. But it gives you access to all manner of professionals like engineers, wildlife biologists, soil scientists, that kind of thing. So if you had some question about, you know, wildlife biology that was highly intricate, that maybe someone like me who has a base understanding but not an expertise doesn't feel fully equipped to answer, I can put you in touch with an engineer or a biologist or something, and we can come out to your property and we can talk about what's going on there. So things like engineering designs, where if you engage the private sector, might cost you or your organization a certain amount of money. We're taxpayer funded. We are not going to be charging you for work products or anything like that. So time from those professionals and whatnot is, you know, subsidized by your taxes. So that's just something that I like to point out. You know, we are able to help in really specific ways across our technical assistance landscape. Next, please. Sue, could you just give me a nod also if you can hear me okay? I realize I should have asked that at the beginning. Thank you. Financial assistance programs, on the other hand, they're basically technical assistance, you know, that we've talked about before, becoming more kind of codified in terms of, okay, we've decided we want to do something on the land here. Let's actually go forward and do that. So like Bailey mentioned before, TA, you don't necessarily have to have eligibility paperwork set up and you know, squared away to receive that. But with financial assistance programs, if you're going to be applying for funding, we are going to ask that you're set up basically so that we can use our tools properly, that work really best when FSA's got the information that they need. We pull all of our stuff from them. So if you're going to be competing in EQIP or CSP or any of those lovely other acronym programs I'm going to be talking about in a second, we ask that you're up to date with financial assistance, because ultimately we need to have that done before we can fund a project entirely. FA programs allow for cost sharing. So, and in most cases, they are reimbursement based. So I like to use cover crop as an example, and I'll get into that in a second. But a good example here just generally is you might determine you're going to be putting in cover crop. You would purchase the cover crop and seed. You would seed, and then when you had germination, you know, you'd call us out. We would certify that you did that, and we would pay you via direct deposit for that practice. So just like to talk about reimbursement as you know, a caveat to some of our programs. But under the process, basically, you will apply for funding. They'll be ranked, and if selected, we reach out to you, and we go from there. But I'm going to talk specifically now about a couple of programs, and we're going to start with EQIP. I did neglect to mention I'm going to talk about resource concerns. So first, I just wanted to frame resource concerns, which we define as an expected degradation of resource below an established threshold or criteria such that the sustainability or intended use is impaired. Essentially, we talk about natural resources, soil, water, air, plant, animals, human, and energy conditions, and we look for opportunities on your land use, whether it's forestry or veg or livestock, what have you. We look at opportunities to conserve and preserve natural resources. So everything we do from a financial assistance and really technical assistance standpoint is based on the resource concern. I.e., my plants are not as healthy as I would like them to be. So that would be a plant productivity resource concern. And the justification for financial assistance programs and funding certain practices and programs that we've got all comes down to and is based on resource concerns as a concept. Next slide, please. I am getting to FA, financial assistance. I'm sorry, this is the last one before that. So resource concerns are going to be, something we come out and talk about. And one of the services that we provide, whether it's in a technical or financial assistance role, is a conservation plan. Like I was talking about in the technical assistance space, these are voluntary and collaborative between us, our recommendations, for what we think you should do on the land, and you. You don't actually have to do any of that if it's technical assistance. If it's financial assistance, like I want to get a high tunnel and we decide to put you in and you get selected to get a high tunnel, at that point we would ask, that you put that high tunnel in. So financial assistance is a little less voluntary once you've actually committed to doing things and we've committed to funding those projects. But in general, we can put in our conservation plans, information about what your resource concerns were and some interesting practices or that kind of thing that we can do to address them. They're nice because they come alongside other information that not everyone necessarily has resources to create. For example, we can do all kinds of maps for you that might help you understand your land better. We can provide you with engineering notes and designs if that's something that we're talking about, like if you're looking to design irrigation, for example. Schedules of when to do that. So if you're trying to think about the best time to put in some winter rye, you don't have to just remember that kind of thing. We'll put that information in there for you, send you some photos, some other tools, all kinds of stuff. And I won't get too far into it because we have a lot of granular information, but know that that's stuff that is provided to you free of charge, as a way of helping you understand your land better and as a way of justifying, the projects that we fund. So, EQIP. So this is probably the one folks have heard most about. This is one of our kind of really main 3 financial assistance programs that I'm going to cover here today. EQIP is one of those programs that is based on improving a resource concern. So an example of EQIP being a good program for you would be, I've noticed this issue on my land of compaction in my soil. I think I'd benefit from cover crop. Would you cost share on cover crop here? Do you agree? And we'd come out and say, okay, let's have a look at what we're doing here. And okay, we've decided that cover crop makes a lot of sense here and you haven't been doing that before. Let's get an application in for you to put this cover crop in, and then we'll batch our financial assistance. And when we get to know to the point that you've been selected and you're all eligible, like Bailey spoke about, we're going to be all set to go ahead and put in that cover crop. So using cover crop and EQIP as an example, you've never done it before, you put it in and you have by default then addressed that resource concern of I have had an issue and now I've implemented a conservation practice that has done something to address that issue. In this case, you would break up the compaction by planting a cover crop that would, have the roots go down and make nice space and aggregate stability and build organic matter and all those other good things that come along with that kind of practice. High tunnels, irrigation, pretty much anything you can think of across land uses, forest land, grazed work, anything. EQIP has pools of funds that we're going to be able to put you in based off of what you're doing. So it's really about, I hate to say bad to good, but if you've got a problem and you're looking to fix it, EQIP is kind of that sort of program. So if you go to the next slide, CSP is building off of that. CSP also is thinking about resource concerns, but in this example, if we're going to stick to the cover crop thought process, maybe you've been cover cropping for a couple of years, putting in single species every fall after your cash crop. And you've noticed that it's doing well, but you'd like to do something else, like try multi-species fall mixes or something like that. We can do all of that under EQIP too, but CSP is nice because it's a longer contract. It's like 5 years, whereas EQIP, the length of the contract is just based on how long your practices take to finish. So you might just have one thing in there, like we're going to put some cover crop in the fall and we'll be done. You might have something like we're going to put a high tunnel in this fall, some irrigation in next year, and some cover crop after that. It really depends on what you have the capacity to take on. And so CSP is sort of one of those things that's longer, and you're going to want to make sure that that's going to be a possibility for you to see out 5 years. For example, you say you've got a lease for the next 4 years, CSP would be kind of troubling there because we've got to make sure you've got the control of your land so that when we enroll you in this program, you can actually do the things we set out to plan to do. But CSP is great because annually you're going to get a minimum payment simply to reward and incentivize all the great work you're already doing to conserve your natural resources. So it's a minimum payment of $1,500 a year. Many times it's more than that. It just depends on how many of those resource concerns you're addressing actively. So essentially, you're going to get compensated to put in those enhancement practices like multi-species cover crop instead of single cover crop kind of situation, but you're also going to get a lump sum every year simply by being in that program. I find this is particularly helpful for small scale operations, not just some small scale like urban ag, although urban ag and CSP do go well together. But if you're working on something and you don't have like 20 acres, you only have half an acre, we don't have this minimum acreage requirement. So you're still going to get $1,500 a year, even if you're farming on 3/4 of an acre, because you are meeting resource concerns in the same way that you would be if you had 300 acres. So that's something that I think is worth noting, but just know that it is going to be a minimum of 5 years. So that's something that is good to keep in mind. And AMA, please, Bailey. I just put this one in here because it's somewhat like EQIP. It's really focused on infrastructure, drought mitigation, high tunnels and irrigation in places they haven't existed before. So EQIP, we can't pay to degrade a resource. So we wouldn't be able to, for example, put irrigation in where we haven't before, because that would be using more water than you had previously used. But AMA is designed to kind of get at, well, okay, but we need to water our fields. So AMA is a program that essentially allows for you to bring out infrastructure, such as a high tunnel or drip irrigation or something like that, to places that don't have a context of irrigation history. But I would say with all of these programs, while I hope it's helpful to get an overview, I really would recommend not getting too bogged down and trying to know everything about them. It is nice to have an understanding, but the main thing I want to focus on is getting folks assigned into our work offices, getting in touch with the people that are in those offices and spaces whose job it is to know these programs inside and out. So let us get to the point where we come out to your operation and meet you and talk to you. It's our job, that's what we're paid for, to understand these programs. So you don't necessarily have to call the office and say, I think I'm interested in AMA. You're more than welcome to. But just know that in your natural course of conversation with your planner, you'll find the right path for you. Next slide, please. This is small. It's just meant to show you, it's a little plug for the Get Started guide, which we're going to get at in a little bit. It's a resource for beginning farmers, but just nice for the visual people in the room, myself included, to be able to look back after some of the information in a more kind of quantifiable way. Let's see if I'm forgetting anything there. I don't think so. All right, I just wanted to address another acronym because we haven't done that enough today. The Inflation Reduction Act funding, and what does it mean for you as a producer? So essentially, to boil it down very basically, it means more funding into things like EQIP and CSP. So it still sort of follows from an end user standpoint. I'm a farmer and I want to get engaged with FSA and NRCS. It's still kind of important to know that your steps are getting involved with those local offices. It's essentially funding to talk more specifically about climate change mitigation practices. So EQIP and CSP as an example, it's more funding for things that are going to sequester carbon, for example. Just a couple examples there on those bullet points. That's not exhaustive at all. So the funding is geared a bit more towards, carbon sequestration, climate change mitigation, that kind of thing. But then again, most of our conservation natural resource practices that we work with on a daily basis do that anyway. So you can imagine a pretty lengthy list. There are other programs that are affected by IRA, mostly just same as EQIP and CSP. It's more money than we've had previously, and that's the easy way to remember it. And I did provide a link in the top left-hand corner here where you can peruse those programs at greater length. But knowing we have limited time, I didn't want to get too bogged down. So feel free to ask me questions in the future about any of those programs that link links out to. But I think I was just going to stick to EQIP and CSP mostly today, as they are, our more common producer-faced programs. Next slide, please. So my big caveat here is the timeline for assistance. I want to just sort of manage, and this is my last slide. Just so you know, presenters, we're going to talk about beginning farmers resources specifically after this for a second, and we'll be good. But the timelines for assistance are the big thing I want to underscore for folks. We represent in our various offices anyone who is, like Bailey was saying, your service center is identified by where you are geographically. So we have these offices across Massachusetts, as you should be able to see there. Each of those offices operates the same way NRCS does generally, and FSA does too, I believe, which is first come, first serve. So the workload is such that we have a few, folks in each office that are going to be assigned to you when you contact the office. Say, give them a ring and say, I'd like an application for EQIP. We can send that kind of thing to you right off, but just know that in terms of scheduling a site visit, which informs our planning process, which informs your financial assistance, that kind of thing can take a bit of time. So it's never too early to be getting in touch with your NRCS and FSA offices to understand, where you currently are and what's needed to get you all squared away. If you're interested, for example, in financial assistance, but you don't have farm records yet, we can help. We can start thinking about when to get out for a site visit. We can make you aware of the next program deadlines for financial assistance, and we can do that at the same time that you work with FSA. So you don't just have to go to FSA and then come talk to NRCS. You can all be talking to us in tandem, and I highly recommend it. But just note that before we can fully submit an application on our end for NRCS, we have to draw from you being up to date with Farm Service Agency. So there's always something you can sort of be doing there, but you don't have to just engage with one of us and then the other. And I recognize that can be a little bit confusing, but hopefully Bailey and I can help point you all in the right directions there. So there's a local service center link once more. And other than that, I would just really recommend, if you have questions, because that's a lot of acronym, that's a lot of process, question and overview, just ask us, because that is sort of why we exist and why your local service center folks exist. It's hard to give an overview program because you could be talking, to someone who owns 300 acres of forest and someone who has an acre of corn. So I try to keep things basic because we want people to have their expectations managed and know just a little bit about us in a way that, empowers you to take your next steps with us.
Great. Thank you so much to Jack and Bailey for that overview. There are questions that have come in through the Q&A box, and I'm going to invite Jack and Bailey to start kind of typing answers to each of those questions. And
oh, Sue,
yeah,
I'm sorry, we do just have one more part for beginning farmer information as well. Can we?
Okay, we're at about 12:50.
Okay.
This will be shared with you. We just want to say that USDA is doing a lot for beginning farmers. There's that brand new guide, the Get Started guide that Jack referenced, that spells this all out in beautiful ways to understand. Visit that if you would like to. We'll send the link, and we can follow up in general. And like we had mentioned at the beginning, we will follow up on any Q&A we didn't get to. So we'll make sure that we include a little blurb on those beginning farmer resources.
That was it. Sorry.
That's perfect. Thanks. Yeah, we have some questions that you guys submitted through the registration form, and we'll try to get through as much as we can today. While you guys are entering more questions in the Q&A box, and hopefully Jack and Bailey can start responding to them there. I'll ask Shannon to turn on your video audio and maybe give a brief hello from CMAP and what resources you guys can offer there.
Unmute, yes. Yeah, sure. I'll be super quick because there's so many good questions in the chat, but my name is Shannon. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the program manager for CMAP, which is the Southeastern Massachusetts Agricultural Partnership. We are the buy local organization for Norfolk, Bristol, and Plymouth counties. You can see our region here, but I do want to mention that our borders are a little bit fuzzy, and we can also work with some farmers in Suffolk County and some farmers in Barnstable County as well. And then beyond that, if you're outside of those areas, get in touch anyways, and we can help you find the right person to talk to. But we're a technical assistance offer for farms, fishers, and market managers. I can provide one-on-one assistance for a lot of off-farm things like grant writing, business planning, website building, that kind of stuff, as well as workshops and networking opportunities, farmer-to-farmer skill shares, and farmer social events. We also do promotion of local food to consumers and advocacy, but for our purposes today, the top two things on this list are kind of where we can plug into some of the USDA programs. So in terms of one-on-one assistance, we can really help you get engaged with your local USDA offices. And then in terms of workshops and networking opportunities, NRCS and FSA are always present at our farmer social events. We actually have one next week that they will be present for. And we also in the past have done workshops on everything from financing to tick pressure to conservation, all sorts of kinds of workshops in collaboration with NRCS and FSA. And then just specifically how we can help with USDA programs. We can help you build connections with the local office staff. As Jack and Bailey mentioned, they're really approachable, and they know their stuff, and they're there to help you. But sometimes I know that it can be intimidating to kind of make that first step. So I'm happy to do that for you. We have relationships with the Wareham NRCS office and the Taunton FSA office. So if those are your offices and you want an introduction, I'm happy to do that. We also can be present for farm or office visits. Totally unnecessary because, like I said, these people are awesome and really approachable. But some farmers have felt a little bit more comfortable if there's another person there, both to kind of keep everybody on task and accountable to a timeline, and also to, maybe address some jargon that comes up, or just be another set of eyes and ears for those visits. Happy to do that as well. We can also help by talking through eligibility for programs and funding, and also navigating applications. But like I said, the local office staff are going to be great at that as well. Additionally, applications for FSA and US and NRCS programs are often a lot lower lift than some of the MDAR grants you might be applying for. So we can certainly help, but you might not need it. And then also connecting you with fellow farmers doing similar USDA projects. So if you're applying for funding for high tunnel through EQIP and you want to just chat with a farmer who's done the same thing, hear some lessons learned, some do's and don'ts, we can connect you with farmers as well. And I'll wrap up there. My contact information is on the screen here, and I'll make sure it's in the chat as well. Call, text, email, all works. I also put on the screen, we have really great partners in the Pocasset-Pokanoket Land Trust and the Carrot Project, who are also service providers who can operate across the whole state and also actually across southern New England. And Pocasset-Pokanoket Land Trust has a great program for assisting BIPOC, immigrant, and beginning farmers with navigating NRCS relationships. And the Carrot Project has a similar program for BIPOC, immigrant, and beginning farmers navigating FSA programs. So their websites are there, but if you want to get in touch with me and have a direct connection to them, I'm happy to do that. That's all I have, and I'll pass it to Stephen, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. I think Stephen has some slides too. He's coming to us from the Western Mass by local CISA. Just keep the questions going through the Q&A. I see Jack and Bailey are typing answers while we're hearing from the other speakers.
Thank you. I think CISA offers a lot of the same similar support that Shannon just described in her presentation. And I think maybe getting to questions could be more valuable use of our time. I will put my contact information in the chat here. CISA, where I work, is another buy local, and we work in Western Massachusetts, primarily in the counties of Franklin, Hampshire, and Hampden. So if you're looking for support with accessing or project and proposal reviews, those kinds of things, and everything that Shannon just described, we offer the same, but in our catchment area. So why don't we go right ahead to the questions?
I appreciate that, Stephen. Thanks. It's always hard when we put these things together. It seems like an hour is plenty of time and it goes by really fast, as we all know. So hopefully folks can stick around through this longer lunch meeting and keep, answering questions in the Q&A as you can. But I'll tap into some of the questions that came in through the registration. Some were about, I work with vegetables and fruits primarily, so I want to just throw a question out about aquaponics. Would those growers be covered by these programs? Maybe.
I can take that one, and that is a little bit in conjunction with one of the questions in the Q&A that wasn't able to get to about what makes a farmer or qualifies you as that sort. So any sort of agricultural operation, aquaponics, aquaculture, hydroponics, anything growing things we absolutely consider as agriculture and are appropriate for our programming. For Farm Service Agency specifically, Jack can say if this is different for NRCS, we just look for producers to be selling commercially. There's not a threshold. You have to make a certain amount of income on your sales, but to be a farmer in one of our programs, we use the metric of commercial sales. For example, someone with a backyard garden that is feeding their family and their neighbors for subsistence is amazing, but doesn't qualify under the guise of having commercial sales. So if you're doing an aquaponics situation and you're selling it commercially, you're going to a farmer's market, you've got restaurants, something like that, absolutely qualifies.
Okay, there were some other questions along those lines. Does it matter if the farmland is leased?
It does not. You do not need to own farmland, any land, as long as you can show that you have control of the land, which means if you're leasing the land, you show us that written lease, you show us the agreement that you have with the landowner. Specifically for some NRCS programs, you do fill out a form about your leasing. The only reason that we really ask for proof of control of the land is for situations like Jack alluded to, when the program goes for a span of 5 years, but we are worried that you might not have secure tenure of the land for the whole time. So it's just, we need to know that you're taking responsibility for what's going on that land, whether you own it or just operate on it.
Okay, more related questions. What if you move locations? Can you transfer your current farm records and name with FSA to a new location?
That is a fantastic question. The FSA farm number is just specific to the land. So if you moved, if you stopped leasing that land or you sold that land and you went somewhere else, the farm number is going to stay with the land, not with you personally. So whatever the next place you go to, if it's brand new, you'll get a new farm number, or if you buy someone else's farm that's already registered with Farm Service Agency, you'll take on that farm number. So the reason that the farm number is land specific, not person or entity specific, is that for things like making conservation plans, like Jack mentioned, we are addressing concerns on that land, not concerns with the producers. Again, with acreage reporting, we are recording the history of what was done on that land, what that land was used for, etc. So that's why the record keeping process is tied to the land, not the producer.
Okay. So what if you were part of a campus farm?
In what sense?
So just wondering eligibility of a farm that is part of a university, college, or other maybe institution. Would they be eligible to apply for this fund?
Sure. So back to the stipulation that they need to be selling their products commercially at some point, you know, probably not just being used in the cafeteria or what have you. That's super important, and we really need that to happen, but that might not make you eligible for our programming. I don't want to speak to this super broadly because it sounds like a specific instance that someone has in mind, and I would be super happy to talk to them personally. But in general, if that farm is operating there and selling and doing farmers markets and doing things like that, it can absolutely have FSA farm number and get help, technical or financial assistance from NRCS. The only stipulations might be when we're talking about the eligibility paperwork, you know, who is the operator? Is it the university itself? Things like that. So instead of getting too deep into the weeds, I would love to, Jack and I actually would be happy to talk to that person specifically.
Yeah, reach out to us because it just comes down to owner operator stuff. A lot of the times, if say a university owns a tract of land and they're leasing it to an individual or an organization, no problem, as long as, you know, we know that the university is okay with, for example, you putting a high tunnel on it. We don't want like UMass Lowell calling and going like, what did you just do? So we just have to have that going on.
Yeah, a lot of the questions are around this topic. In the Q&A box, there's a community garden on private property or city property. So again, the answer is, as long as that is an organization selling food and
yeah, and for us,
tenure of the land.
NRCS really just cares about who's operating it. You know, we just can't fund like the city of Boston. But if the city of Boston is leasing to Jack's Flowers LLC, then we don't care that the city of Boston owns it. We just need to know we're not paying the city of Boston, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Lots of other questions about the timeline, and I know you mentioned that and probably can't be too specific, but do you have any kind of like estimates of how long it takes between an initial reaching out to the office and getting a farm visit? And
yeah, so, and I tried to answer this one in the chat, and
okay.
I have kind of gone over this way a bit more. I was getting lost in that other place, but you reach out to NRCS and or FSA whenever you're ready, and just know that the sooner you do that, the sooner you'll be serviced. So it's not like there's a time of year where we specifically accept applications or a time of year where you specifically can reach out to us. You can always reach out to us. Workload varies by office. They're all, you know, fairly busy, but I don't have a comfortable, like, it'll take you 2 weeks to get a site visit answer, because that's going to be the prerogative of the person who runs that office. It's the district conservationist. I can manage those expectations in conversations, but in general, please don't wait to reach out. If you're ready, reach out. And the other thing about financial assistance timelines is we've got batching deadlines. So we get our funding each year, and then we have, sometimes it's every month, or in this case, it's every 2 months. So the next deadline technically for financial assistance is in May, on May 19th. But you can apply for things on a rolling basis. So you just contact your local service center or ask me to help you get in touch and say, I'd like to fill out an application for financial assistance. Just know that, like, on that form, they're going to ask for your farm and tract number. So that's why it makes sense to talk to FSA and NRCS at the same time. I would say whenever you have the capacity to reach out, reach out. Just know that if you have never talked to NRCS before and you call them the day before a deadline, we have to go out and see the field, have a conversation with you, and then, like, do that work on our end as well. So if there are a few people in line, we just have to get through those people as well. So don't hold back. Definitely reach out as soon as you're able to receive assistance from us, and we'll get to you as soon as we can.
Okay, great. Let's see. So you covered aquaponics, yes. What about greenhouse renovation? Those would be covered as well.
So we have,
Like greenhouse growers, I'm sorry, like not necessarily growing in soil, but
right. Yeah. So it all comes down to resource concerns. So, so for an example, for greenhouse growers and high tunnel growers that we did recently, we did ebb and flow benches, so they're in soil, but they're not in ground in soil, but they were hand watering. And wouldn't it be nice if you could do the nutrient application in the water through an ebb and flow bench? And so that, is an energy saving, a resource concern saving, a water saving. Absolutely. Happy to help.
So thinking about those other resources that maybe I don't always think of, but
yeah,
energy, air, water also included.
Yes.
Okay. Some things from the Q&A box. What if you are selling products but not necessarily making any profit? Are you still eligible as a farmer? Okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe this one from Michael just came in. Can you get an FSA loan to build a tunnel through EQIP?
That is a fantastic question. So glad you asked that. I did want to bring that up. Yes. In the sense, like Jack mentioned, them being reimbursement programs, if you need the cash flow up front, if it's something to improve or strengthen your operation, FSA can indeed be that. It's the idea of like a bridge loan, to bridge it over till the reimbursement comes in. So absolutely, that is actually one of the great ways that FSA and NRCS can collaborate on the same project, because we know if you're doing it and needing the reimbursement, it's likely that there's not the cash flow up front. So let's make that happen.
Absolutely. And I would just add to that in certain cases and for certain programs, we can do, especially for beginning farmers, we can do explore advanced payments as well. But yeah, we funded maybe the majority of some of our high tunnel projects, for example, through FSA working seamlessly with NRCS. Since you've got to go to both of us anyways, we're all in the same room making sure, okay, your loan's coming in this day, we'll give you this amount of time to get the high tunnel in, and we're all on the same page. So it's great that you asked that question. It's a common thing that we do.
Great. Let's see. There was a question, again, kind of about the eligibility and what makes a farmer, but what if you are thinking about starting a nonprofit farm or community garden, and would you be eligible for the technical assistance that you guys talked about? Having someone come out and help you determine if that's a good idea or not.
I'd say that's a great place to start with us. Yeah, I think in general, yes, and especially just figuring out how to be eligible for things. That's a great conversation for Bailey and I to answer specifically. But yeah, you don't have to have made total decisions about that. The land is the land too. Say you've identified where you're going to be growing and it's on a crazy slope. Whether you're an LLC or an individual, we're probably going to want to think about how we're, working on that land so as not to create ephemeral gullies. But yeah, we can help with that. And there are some other great resources we can point you to that help with farm business planning that are outside of USDA stuff. Like New Entry is great. There's a million great organizations there that can help. So. Yes,
absolutely. And I do want to clarify, nonprofits are eligible to work with Farm Service Agency. We work with any sort of legally constructed entity. It's just for certain programming and things, you do have to show the commercial saleable piece.
Okay, another question from the registration. Is the conservation plan a required step before you get funding from NRCS programs?
Yeah, that is a great question. The conservation plan is I'd almost think of it as like a diary of what you talked about along the way. I think in the past, NRCS has been kind of unclear about this. It is something that we give you. So if you're applying for financial assistance, the things that you're applying for are listed in the conservation plan. So, okay, we're gonna do a high tunnel this spring. So our conservation plan will say this spring, you're going to do a high tunnel. And some cases, it's pretty much as simple as that. There's some boilerplate language that tells you, hey, make sure you're allowed to do this, like, you know, with your various folks. Like if you're against a national park, they might have something to say. Like we want to make sure that you're doing your own due diligence within like your town's conservation commission and that kind of thing. But in general, it's basically just highlighting, here's what we talked about. And it might be a mix of like, we talked about cover crop, but you're really only applying for a high tunnel for whatever reason. We'll include, you're going to do cover crop this fall and a high tunnel this spring. That doesn't then mean you need to apply for all those things. It might be part and parcel, but it's our work product or one of our work products that we provide you with to sort of register, you know, what's going on. So you don't do that for us. That's kind of like in our shop doing that for you to provide that to you and get you into our system for application.
Okay, but maybe a different way of asking the question. The meeting with an NRCS planner is required before you can apply for and receive funding.
No, you could apply for funding, but we're going to come out and meet with you, identify the resource concerns, have a conversation with you, then submit your application on your behalf. So it's no, you can't just never meet with one of us, but yes, you can apply. Oftentimes, we just want to make sure you're doing the application right. It's pretty straightforward. And I should have said this earlier, EQIP, CSP, AMA, all the same application, very simple. But we're going to need to come out and, you know, make sure that, you know, you have 2 acres and whatever. So that's just one of those things where, yeah, you could apply, but we're going to have a conversation at some point and do a site visit.
Okay. I think that's clear. If it's still not clear, people can clarify more, or I want to say you can raise your hand, but I'm not actually sure if you can.
I'd also put a plug there, Sue, for the game board. The conservation assistance tool we'll be pointing out
Okay.
was a more articulate version, I think. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we'll share that after. There were a couple of questions about fencing, whether to keep animals and deer and stuff out or to keep livestock in, and are those covered in both cases, or?
I can take that one. So fencing for us is to exclude livestock from wetlands or to manage grazing. So deer fencing is usually something we have folks apply through MDAR for. Under the justification of the food security infrastructure, food safety, under the climate smart agriculture program, because they can justify, you know, the deer in that way. For example, we do fencing all the time, but we have to just tie it back at least to, we're just doing this because we want to graze more effectively, or we're doing this so we don't lose a cow in the river. Does that help generally?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. More questions about the eligibility. How long do you have to be a farm? Or what documentation of your sales is required if I start selling?
Sure.
Later this summer, does that count? Or how many records do I need to have of that?
Absolutely. So there is no length of farming requirement. You can start today and your first step can be signing up for a farm number. You don't need, you know, the commercial sale pieces, you don't need that to get a farm number or to talk to us or to do anything like that. It's more so for provisions of, if you're getting crop insurance, if we're insuring your crop, this is part of you having a business model. If we're giving you a loan, we would like to see that you have some sort of business plan for how cash flow is going to come in, how your profit is going to be made. So for the most part, for farm service agency programs, the income commercial sales is self-certification. You say you are selling product. For getting a loan, just like through a bank or through anything else, they're going to look more closely at your records, but that would be on your invoices or your QuickBooks, or, you know, however you keep your records. There's no right or wrong. Taxes, it helps, but not everybody uses a Schedule F, for example, but that can be a way that you monitor your situation. So a lot of it, you say you're farming, you started farming when you say you started farming. And we take you at that self-certification. Proof comes more so when you are getting financial loans and things.
And I just want to reiterate, for NRCS, we're more focused on, it's the natural resources. So we're more focused on the resource concerns. So we don't particularly care about those things as much. It's more so, what are you doing? How can we make sure that it's, we help you conserve land? So less of a farm business context in a lot of cases.
Some other questions. What about remediation of soil or removal of soil that's maybe contaminated in maybe an urban setting?
Yeah, so we get that question a lot. We don't have remediation practices of that nature at this point. We can, if you have contaminated soil, we have scenarios like raised beds, where we can put in like a semi-permeable barrier between your contaminated soil, and then we can help cost share on the raised beds. We can help with soil in a lot of ways. We used to just do soil, actually, before we got our funding. And we can help build soil health. We can help address soil in that way, but we can't say, for example, pay to truckload out or in, you know, vast quantities of soil like that. We can help with nutrient management in other ways. We can even help in some cases with like composting or mulching scenarios. That kind of thing we can do, but we are a non-regulatory agency. And that is really important to mention. We're not gonna, you know, like tell Big Brother or something if we are not Big Brother, even though we are the government. And part of not being regulatory means we can't tell you what to do with it, but it also means we can't then truck it all away for you. It's kind of that catch-22, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Another question here. What can you give us a sense of like the range of funding people could anticipate? And I guess it, you know, depends on the program. If they're applying for that multi-year CSP program, it might be different, but
I can answer CSP is you're not going to get less than $1,500 for 5 years, plus whatever little enhancement you're doing. It's about resource concerns you're meeting. So if you're meeting a plant productivity and health, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but you're going to get like $300 for each resource concern you've met. So I'd say the average ones that I do are like end up being like $2,100 to $2,400 a year. And then, you know, maybe you're putting in multi-species cover crop every year as well. EQIP is going to be whatever you're looking to do, with the exception of, I think we cap at $400,000 of farm bill per producer. So you should be all right. You know, some people come to us for a quarter acre cover crop. Some people come to us for bunk silos. And so it's going to be the level of what you can take on. So, you know, those costs are factored in this payment scenarios. They're not 100% blanket statement. Some of them may actually be a bit more than things cost, and some of them may be a bit less. We get our scenarios handed down from national. We can make some tweaks and say, well, metal costs more in Massachusetts, for example. But for the most part, we're given, this is what you have, this is what you can offer, it's how much it should cost scenarios. And so it's going to be, you know, say a high tunnel costs $13K to put in. They try to factor in for labor, they try to factor in for parts and that kind of thing. I don't get a lot of wiggle room to go back and say, this should be more. I do sometimes say that anyways, and sometimes people listen to me and sometimes they don't. But in general, it's going to be, you just can't have, I think, more than 400,000 every like 4 years. hopefully that will work for you wherever you are.
Yeah, great. That's helpful. One question, how do you determine what size of tunnel someone would be eligible for?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on like what you're growing. Like if you're in a 30 by 96 is a great example. We have a large high tunnel. That's where those plants are that meet that resource concern of the plant productivity and health is poor, but could be excellent if we put it in here. So it's sort of referential to what you're able to farm. So we're not going to try to squeeze a 30 by 96 high tunnel on like, you know, we have a scenario that's one for 750 square feet. So if you're an urban grower, you know, you can select, you can say, I would like to do a high tunnel. We're going to determine, well, you're growing on 790 square feet. You could put a 750 square foot high tunnel in here. So it really comes down to the land that's in production, and that qualifies as meeting a resource concern there. And that's true for everything across the board. We have scenarios for cover crop down to the 1,000 square foot now. To give you an idea of this, 3 years ago, we only had it for an acre or less as a blanket payment. So we're getting smaller and more representative of what Massachusetts agricultural production looks like. So it's going to depend on your operation, what's in production, what justifies what we're doing here, you know.
Okay. Sonia had a few questions here about wetlands delineations and drainage ditches, maintaining those. Address that, and then I'll call on Jody, Jess, who has their hand up, and sorry I didn't see that sooner. If you could speak to Sonia's questions there about wetlands and drainage ditches.
Yeah, and maybe I'll share this one with Bailey a little. Bailey, do you want to talk about the the AD 1026?
That famous AD 1026. Again, with being the government and acronyms and paperwork, we name our forms with letters and numbers and make them as scary as we can make them sound. The AD 1026 is one of those eligibility forms that we require participants to fill out to determine their eligibility for programming. Basically, what it means is it is asking you if you grow a commodity, meaning annually tilled crop. We consider if you are growing on highly erodible soils, because we do not want to make anything worse. Like Jack said, we don't want to degrade any further. So we ask about that. If you do have highly erodible soils, it's a situation you can get a conservation plan from NRCS and figure out how to deal with that. So that's one piece of it. And the other piece is the wetlands determination. We need to make sure that you are not farming in a wetland situation. So there was a big, not to get into the weeds of it, 1985 was a turning point of the USDA saying, stop converting wetlands into farmland. So if you are farming on land that was converted prior to 1985, you're okay. But since then, we cannot, like Jack said, we're non-regulatory, so we can't get you in trouble, but we can't give you money if you are farming in a wetland or converting wetland situations. So those are our two big environmental concerns in terms of eligibility, highly erodible soil and wetlands. And we won't get you in trouble. We just won't pay you if you are violating any of those stipulations.
And I can speak a bit more to how that works with wetland delineations and certification. So we talk about eligibility paperwork as like this kind of nebulous thing. Instead of giving you a 2-hour presentation where we go through the entire forms, which we can do that individually, that makes more sense. One of the eligibility components is that form, and that means FSA gets it, starts it with you, figures out where your land is, and then NRCS actually sends out a wetland scientist or a soil scientist or a conservation planner to go ahead and make sure that we're not just funding a cover crop that's halfway in a swamp, halfway outside of it, kind of thing. Sometimes we have decisions where we just say, you know, this is a totally a wetland or totally not. Sometimes the same for highly erodible land. It's potentially this and that. We have minimal effects. So just because a portion of your field might be touching wetland, you know, doesn't mean that there's no agricultural production that can ever happen. Fencing is a great example, right? We can do something on that land, even though it abuts a wetland, particularly because we want to help you kind of create that space and make sure you don't degrade those resources. So if you're going to apply for financial assistance programs, you don't have to remember to ask us about wetland stuff. We'll do that as part of getting you set up in our systems because we're congressionally required to.
Great, I think that answers that question. Let's see. Jody, are you still here and want to ask your question? You should be able to unmute now. You had raised a hand. Might have been a little while ago. Any other questions for any of our panelists as we begin to wrap up here? I think we've covered everything I had on my lists. So with that, we'll close it out, and we'll be sending some other resources, typing up some of these questions and answers, and sharing the recording with you and whoever else was not able to make it today. So thanks to all of you for attending, and thanks so much to all of the presenters. And I know I learned a lot about the programs, which can be confusing with all the acronyms. So appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thanks, Bailey. Thanks, Jack. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for joining and your work too. Thanks, Sue and team for organizing.
All right. Go enjoy this cold, sunny day.
Oh my gosh. All right. You too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.